The Hegemony Grand Fleet's massive warships gleamed under the dual suns of the Proxima Centauri system, their hulls absorbing the red-tinged light as they methodically obliterated the planet's final orbital defenses. Debris from the once proud Proximan fleet drifted silently through space, glittering like diamond dust against the backdrop of stars. High Admiral Zextar stood motionless on the observation deck of his flagship, Eternal Dominion, his 4 violet eyes narrowing with satisfaction. The transparent viewing wall automatically compensated for the brightness of the nearby explosions, allowing him to watch the spectacle without discomfort. The planetary defense grid has been neutralized, High Admiral, reported Sub-Commander Vrex as she approached with a data tablet. Her scales shimmered with the traditional victory patterns of their species. Ground resistance continues in 3 metropolitan centers, but our forces will have complete control within 7 standard hours. Zextar nodded, his ceremonial head crest extending slightly in pleasure. Excellent. Begin preparations for the victory ceremony. I want representatives from all captured worlds to witness the integration of Proxima into the hegemony. Vrex hesitated, her lower hands tightening around the data tablet. There is one additional matter, High Admiral. Our intelligence units discovered communications between the Proximans and another civilization, a species called humans from a system designated Sol. Zextar accepted the tablet with a dismissive gesture. The screen displayed rudimentary data about the Earth system, a yellow star, 8 planets, with the 3rd world marked as the species' homeworld. What significance does this hold? Have these humans provided assistance to the Proximans? No, High Admiral. They appear to be isolationists. Limited trade only, minimal space presence beyond their immediate system. Their technology seems several generations behind hegemony standards. However, Vrex's voice lowered slightly. Multiple conquered civilizations had established similar limited contact with this Earth. Zextar scrolled through the data with growing disinterest. So they are diplomats and merchants. Hardly a concern for our military planning division. He handed the tablet back to Vrex. As you say, High Admiral, the diplomatic division suggests including Sol in the next expansion phase, primarily as a resource acquisition target. Before Zextar could respond, the deck's entrance portal slid open. 2 armored guards escorted a slender figure into the observation area. Ambassador Kelnara, the highest-ranking surviving Proximan official. Despite the visible injuries marking his pale blue skin, the ambassador maintained a dignified posture. "You requested my presence, Conqueror," the ambassador asked, his translator rendering his complex tonal language into standard hegemony speech. Zextar gestured toward the viewing wall, where Proxima Centauri IRI hung like a wounded jewel. "A courtesy before your execution, Ambassador. A final view of your world as it joins the greater prosperity of the hegemony." The ambassador's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that Zextar's cultural implant identified as indicating resignation. Yet something in the Proximan's stance suggested not defeat but anticipation. "You should have studied Earth's history before coming here," the ambassador said softly, his gaze fixed not on his dying world but on the distant stars. "Humans don't build weapons until they need them." Zextar laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. "Another primitive world to add to our collection. After 70 civilizations, do you truly believe this one will be different?" "They always seem unremarkable," the ambassador replied, "until they aren't." Zextar turned away, dismissing both the warning and the doomed ambassador with a wave. The hegemony Grand Fleet had never known defeat. What could one insignificant world possibly contribute to that equation? In the underground war room beneath Mount Everest, Admiral Helena Chen studied the holographic displays with unwavering concentration. The three-dimensional representation of the hegemony fleet that had conquered Proxima Centauri rotated slowly above the central table, each enemy vessel meticulously detailed down to its weapons emplacements and engine configurations. Their tactical approach relies on overwhelming force rather than innovation, she noted, her finger tracing the formation patterns. 4-tiered assault waves, predictable shield modulation sequences, standardized command ship positioning. The 12 members of the United Earth Defense Council sat in contemplative silence around the circular table. The room, carved from the living rock of the mountain 2 kilometers below the surface, was designed to withstand even direct nuclear strikes. General Marcus Santos, representing the Pan-American Alliance, leaned forward. The Proximans fought well, but their technology was fundamentally similar to the hegemony's. Our advantage lies in our divergent development path. Exactly, Chen replied, tapping a control that shifted the display to show Earth's solar system. For 3 centuries, we've maintained the appearance of limited space capability while developing technologies the hegemony cannot anticipate. Outside, Earth appeared peaceful to any observing eyes. A planet seemingly more concerned with art, commerce, and environmental restoration than military might. Cities gleamed under the sunlight, their sustainable architecture blending harmoniously with restored natural landscapes. This carefully cultivated image masked an entirely different reality. Chen activated her neural interface, connecting directly to the global defense network. The holographic display expanded, revealing what no outside observer had ever seen. Jupiter's perpetual storms concealed massive shipyards. Venus's dense atmosphere gave energy weapon testing facilities. Mercury's dark side housed quantum computing centers that directed automated manufacturing plants throughout the system. And the asteroid belt contained millions of semi-autonomous weapon platforms disguised as ordinary rocks. The loss of Proxima Centauri confirms our timeline has accelerated, said Dr. Eliza Kimathi, Science Director. Hegemony expansion patterns suggest Earth will be targeted within 6 months. Chen nodded. Then we proceed according to the Chimera Protocol. She stood, her slender frame belying the authority she commanded. As of this moment, all hidden facilities are authorized for final production phase. Across the solar system, manufacturing centers that had been operating at minimal capacity for generations began powering up to full production. Within the clouds of Jupiter, massive hull sections moved along assembly lines staffed by robots and specialized personnel who had lived their entire lives in secret. In the Kuiper Belt, advanced propulsion systems underwent final calibration as they were installed in vessels that had never known sunlight. What about the colonies on Mars and the Jovian moons? Asked Admiral Wei, his weathered face creased with concern. Their civilian populations are vulnerable. Evacuation protocols are already in motion, Chen replied, disguised as routine transport movements. The hegemony's scout vessels will see exactly what we want them to see, a disorganized, panicked response from a technologically inferior civilization. The display shifted again, showing the projected path of the incoming hegemony forces. Chen's expression remained resolute as she issued the command that humanity had prepared for over centuries of patient waiting. "Commence Operation Delayed Reckoning," she stated, her voice echoing in the chamber. "Let the hegemony come. They believe they're approaching our beginning. They're actually facing our revelation." As the council members departed to oversee their respective command areas, Chen remained alone with the holographic display. She zoomed in on an unlabeled section of the outer solar system where Earth's true fleet, hidden for generations, waited in perfect stillness for the order to awaken. Captain Kralvor stood proudly on the command bridge of the hegemony vessel Inevitable Conquest, his scaled fingers tapping impatiently against the tactical display. His battle group, 5 heavy cruisers and 12 support vessels, had entered the Sol system just hours ago, expecting to encounter primitive defenses from the supposedly underdeveloped human civilization. Status report, he demanded, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic tones of the hegemony elite warrior caste. Lieutenant Mevnar looked up from her sensor station. Long-range scans confirm minimal defensive installations around the 4th planet, Captain. We've detected a small group of human vessels near the orbital station. Their engine signatures suggest outdated propulsion technology. Visual confirmation, Kralvor ordered. The main view screen activated, displaying a cluster of human ships that appeared to be moving in disorganized patterns around the Martian orbit. Their designs seemed functional but unsophisticated, cylindrical hulls with exposed radiator fins and bulky engine sections. Pitiful, Kralvor commented, mandibles kicking in amusement. Send the standard warning shots across their trajectory. Let's see how quickly they scatter. On the bridge of the Earth vessel Deception, Commander Sarah Williams maintained perfect composure as her ship's sensors registered the hegemony's weapons powering up. The exterior of her ship looked deliberately obsolete, a calculated design choice that concealed the vessel's true capabilities beneath layers of technological camouflage. "They're taking the bait," Williams said quietly to her executive officer. "Continue broadcasting the falsified technical data on all frequencies they're scanning." Lieutenant Commander Rahul Patel nodded, his fingers dancing across the neural interface panel. "Transmitting now. Their sensor arrays are absorbing everything we're feeding them. The spectral analysis suggests they're particularly interested in our engine emissions." Williams allowed herself a small smile. "Give them exactly what they expect. Make it look like we're running on fusion torches with efficiency ratings 30% below current hegemony standards." Beneath the rust-colored Martian surface, vast quantum computing arrays processed every detail of the incoming hegemony vessels, analyzing communication patterns, weapons signatures, shield frequencies, and propulsion characteristics. Each piece of data was compared against the intelligence Earth had gathered over decades of covert observation. Their technology hasn't advanced significantly since their engagement at Tar-City, reported Dr. James Okonkwo from the subterranean Olympus Mons facility. His message traveled via quantum-entangled communications that left no detectable signals for hegemony sensors to discover. Their shield harmonics remain vulnerable to precisely modulated graviton pulses. Back on the Deception, Williams received the analysis through her neural implant. She watched the hegemony vessels advance with measured confidence, completely unaware that each moment of their approach revealed more weaknesses to Earth's hidden observation network. "Launch the resource transport decoys," she ordered. "Make it look like we're attempting to evacuate valuable materials from the orbital stations. Ensure their trajectories appear uncoordinated, like a panicked response." As the unarmed transport vessels moved erratically away from Mars, the hegemony cruisers adjusted course to intercept them. Kralvor's voice carried clearly through the communication channels his crew had opened, allowing the humans to hear his dismissive assessment. "These humans haven't even developed basic military formations," he remarked to his bridge officers. "High Admiral X-Tar will be disappointed. I expected at least a minor challenge." Williams whispered to her helmsman as the hegemony ships followed the exact pursuit pattern Earth's strategic simulations had predicted. Let them think they've seen everything we have. The deeper they come into our system, the more they reveal, and the less opportunity they'll have to escape. Captain Kralvor's confidence turned to mild irritation as his battle group approached Earth's moon. His vessels had encountered minimal resistance, merely a few defensive satellites that had been easily neutralized by standard disruptor fire. "This is even more disappointing than anticipated," he remarked to his tactical officer. "These humans barely qualify as a spacefaring civilization. Perhaps they should be classified as a resource acquisition target rather than a proper military conquest." On his command display, the lunar surface appeared barren and pockmarked, with only a few obvious human installations visible on the near side. The long-range sensors detected nothing unusual, exactly as Earth's stealth technologies were designed to ensure. "Captain," Lieutenant Mevnar called out suddenly, her voice rising in pitch. Energy spike detected from the lunar surface. Multiple signatures activating simultaneously. Before Kralvor could issue orders, the supposedly primitive defense satellites surrounding Earth's orbit suddenly emitted energy signatures that overwhelmed the hegemony sensors. The reading scales jumped exponentially, forcing automatic adjustments as the instruments struggled to classify the unfamiliar power outputs. "Impossible," Kralvor hissed, mandibles flaring in alarm. No Level 3 civilization could possess such. His words died as precision particle beams sliced through the forward section of his flanking vessels. The beams, focused with unprecedented accuracy, bypassed the hegemony shields by oscillating at frequencies the defensive systems couldn't intercept. "Evasive maneuvers," Kralvor shouted as his flagship shuddered under a glancing impact. "All vessels, implement combat spread pattern Taris 7. But the coordinated defense had only begun. Dozens of asteroids that his sensors had classified as ordinary space debris suddenly changed trajectory, their surfaces splitting open to reveal autonomous weapon platforms. Each platform fired convergent energy pulses that exploited the precise shield modulation frequencies the hegemony vessels were using. In the command center beneath the lunar surface, Major Diane Wong watched the holographic battle display with calm intensity. Defense grid performing at 98.6% efficiency. She reported to Admiral Chen through their secure quantum link. "The hegemony vessels are responding exactly as predicted." "Proceed to Phase 2, came Chen's measured response. "Deploy the intercept vessels, but maintain stealth protocols on our main fleet. We need at least one of their ships to escape and report back." From concealed bays beneath the lunar regolith, 5 mid-sized Earth warships emerged, their hulls displaying a perfect blend of functionality and elegance that belied their lethal capabilities. Unlike the deliberately outdated vessels the hegemony had encountered earlier, these ships represented the true intermediate level of Earth's technology, still far from revealing humanity's actual military capacity, but sufficient to send the necessary message. The Earth vessels moved with precision that Kralvor's tactical systems couldn't anticipate, their inertial control systems allowing maneuvers that seemed to defy basic physics. The fleeing hegemony ships fired desperately at their pursuers, but their weapons splashed harmlessly against advanced shield technologies. "Our weapons have no effect," screamed Kralvor's weapons officer as another hegemony vessel erupted into flames. "Their shielding operates on principles our systems can't analyze." Kralvor stared in disbelief as his battle group disintegrated around him. Of 17 vessels, only his command ship remained operational, and even it suffered breaches across multiple decks. With bitter resignation, he gave the only order possible. Initiate emergency translocation. Return to hegemony space immediately. As his damaged vessel limped into faster-than-light travel, Kralvor knew his career was finished. But far more concerning was the report he would deliver to High Admiral Zextar, that everything they thought they knew about Earth was catastrophically, perhaps fatally, wrong. High Admiral Zextar stood before the Hegemony War Council, his normally imposing presence diminished by the holo recordings playing behind him. The footage, recovered from Captain Kralvor's damaged vessel, showed Earth vessels moving with impossible agility, wielding weapons that bypassed hegemony shields as if they didn't exist. This single defeat changes nothing, Zextar insisted, his voice carrying less conviction than usual. These humans caught one small battle group by surprise. They cannot stand against the full might of the Grand Fleet. The 7 members of the War Council watched silently, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Grand Strategist Velmoran spoke, her aged voice carrying the weight of centuries of military experience. In 3,000 cycles, no civilization has ever destroyed a hegemony battle group so completely, she observed. This requires a recalibration of our assessment. They spent their full military capacity on this single engagement, Zextar argued. A desperate defense that revealed all their capabilities. Grand Strategist Velmoran's compound eyes narrowed. And if you're wrong, the Proximan Ambassador's warning suggests these humans were prepared for us. After hours of deliberation, the War Council authorized what Zextar demanded, the deployment of the largest military force assembled in a generation. 200 capital ships, 500 cruisers, and over 1,000 support vessels gathered at the edge of hegemony space, a fleet that had conquered entire sectors without suffering significant losses. 3 weeks later, the Armada entered the Sol system in battle formation, weapons charged and shields at maximum. Zextar stood on the command deck of his new flagship, the Asterisk Inevitable Victory Asterisk, as they approached Jupiter's orbit. No sign of resistance yet, reported his sensor officer. Wait, detecting unusual gravitational distortions near the gas giant. Zextar leaned forward as the main viewer focused on Jupiter's swirling clouds. The distortions intensified, warping the space around the massive planet in patterns that defied conventional physics. "What am I seeing?" he demanded. Before anyone could answer, massive objects began emerging from within Jupiter's atmosphere, warships of unprecedented scale, their hulls gleaming with materials unknown to hegemony science. Vessels that dwarfed even the hegemony's largest dreadnoughts slid into formation with silent grace, their very presence causing gravitational ripples that the hegemony sensors struggled to interpret. "Impossible," whispered Zextar. "No fleet of that size could remain hidden within a planetary atmosphere." The main communication screen activated without any action from the hegemony crew. Admiral Helena Chen appeared, her expression calm and resolute as she regarded Zextar. "High Admiral," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "I see you've brought more ships this time." Zextar fought to maintain his composure. "You face the full might of the hegemony Grand Fleet. Your primitive world cannot hope to stand against us." Chen's expression didn't change. "We studied every species the hegemony conquered over the past century," she explained, her tone almost educational. "We learned from their mistakes and prepared accordingly." Behind her, the massive Earth dreadnoughts moved into perfect formation, their names emblazoned on their hulls in multiple human languages: Thermopylae, Mahabharata, Normandy, Tianxia, and Shaka. "You believed our peaceful exterior reflected our capabilities," Chen continued. "That was your first mistake. Your second was believing that what Captain Krelvor encountered represented our full military capacity. For the first time in his long career, Zextar felt true uncertainty as he stared at the human fleet. Not only were their vessels larger than anything in his armada, but their design philosophies and technologies appeared wholly alien to anything the hegemony had encountered in its long history of conquest. "We've been waiting for you, High Admiral," Chen said simply. "Now you'll understand why." The space around Jupiter became a theatre of unprecedented warfare as Zextar ordered the hegemony fleet to engage. "All vessels, attack pattern dominance prime," he commanded, his voice steady despite his growing apprehension. "Concentrate fire on their flagship." Thousands of energy weapons discharged simultaneously, creating a web of destructive force that would have obliterated any conventional opponent. Yet as the barrage reached the human vessels, something extraordinary happened. The energy seemed to bend around their hulls, redirected by field technologies that operated on principles beyond hegemony understanding. "No effect," shouted the weapons officer, mandibles clicking in distress. "The defensive systems are absorbing our attacks." The human fleet's response came with surgical precision. Rather than unleashing a full counterattack, their weapons targeted specific systems on the hegemony vessels, propulsion nodes, sensor arrays, and weapons emplacements. The strikes bypassed shields with technologies that the hegemony's scientists had considered theoretically impossible. Quantum-locked beams that ignored conventional defensive barriers and gravitational weapons that created localized distortions in spacetime. On the bridge of the Earth Dreadnought Normandy, Admiral Chen monitored the battle through her neural interface. Phase 1 proceeding as anticipated, she noted to her tactical officer, Commander Jackson. Their formations match historical patterns from the Antares campaign. "They're adapting," Jackson replied, highlighting a section of the display where hegemony vessels were attempting to regroup into a defensive sphere, shifting shield frequencies faster than predicted. Chen nodded. "Deploy the Mobius squadrons." From bays along the human capital ships, smaller vessels launched in perfect synchronization. Unlike traditional fighter craft, these ships demonstrated maneuverability that seemed to defy physics itself, their inertial manipulation drives allowing them to change direction instantaneously without momentum effects. Aboard the Inevitable Victory *, Zextar watched in growing horror as the smaller human ships darted between his massive capital ships with precision that suggested an intelligence network operating faster than light itself. More disturbing still was the realization dawning on him as the battle progressed. "They're minimizing casualties," he murmured, watching as human weapons precisely disabled hegemony vessels without destroying them completely. "They could annihilate us, but they're choosing not to." The most sophisticated hegemony warships, vessels that had participated in dozens of conquests without sustaining damage, found themselves paralyzed by targeted systems failures. Shield generators overloaded, propulsion systems went offline, and weapons arrays shut down under precisely calculated strikes. As his flagship shuddered under another precision attack, Zextar finally grasped the devastating truth. Humanity had been preparing for this confrontation for generations, studying the hegemony from afar, while developing countermeasures to every advantage his forces possessed. "High Admiral," came Admiral Chen's voice over the communication channel. "Your fleet is neutralized. 73% of your vessels have lost propulsion capabilities. 58% have lost weapons functionality. You have two options: withdraw your remaining operational ships, or face complete defeat." The command deck fell silent as Zextar contemplated the unthinkable. In 3,000 years of expansion, No hegemony fleet had ever been forced to retreat. "This isn't possible," he whispered, more to himself than to his officers. "How could one world develop such technologies without our knowledge?" As if sensing his question, Chen responded, "Your assumption that technological progress follows a single path was your fundamental error. While you conquered using the same methods for centuries, we explored possibilities your civilization never considered." With bitter resignation, Zextar gave the order no High Admiral had ever before uttered. "All vessels with functional drives implement emergency withdrawal. We're retreating." The Hegemony War Council received High Admiral Zextar's defeat with stunned silence. For 3 days, emergency sessions convened in the ancient citadel on their throne world as military leaders struggled to comprehend the unprecedented situation. "We must mobilize our reserve fleets," insisted War Minister Dravkol, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's lights. "Gather our forces from all sectors and overwhelm these humans with sheer numbers." Grand Strategist Vel Moran shook her head slowly. "That would leave our conquered worlds vulnerable to uprising. Already we've received reports of increased resistance activities in 7 sectors." Before the debate could continue, the chamber's main display activated without authorization. The security systems, considered impenetrable, had been bypassed as if they didn't exist. Admiral Helena Chen's face appeared before the assembled hegemony leadership. "Your deliberations are unnecessary," she stated calmly. "The conflict has already moved beyond your control." "How dare you?" Dravkol sputtered. "This communication breach is impossible." Ken continued as if he hadn't spoken. "While your remaining fleet retreated from our system, Earth initiated our true strategic objective." The display split into multiple sections, each showing different hegemony-controlled worlds. To the Council's shock, human vessels had somehow appeared simultaneously in 70 different star systems, bypassing defensive fleets entirely. Rather than attacking, these vessels were deploying specialized communication satellites. The devices immediately overrode local networks to broadcast a simple message to the subjugated populations. "The hegemony is no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. Earth stands with you." "Impossible," whispered Zextar. "No species possesses translocation technology capable of such rapid deployment across these distances." Chen's expression remained impassive. "We developed superluminal travel technologies along entirely different principles than your civilization. Your methods are fundamentally flawed, highly detectable, and inefficient." The Council watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from across their empire. The human transmissions included comprehensive tactical data on hegemony military capabilities and weaknesses. More damaging still, Earth had provided detailed instructions for disabling the control systems that had kept the conquered populations in check for generations. "Our analysis of your neuro-compliance technology revealed 16 exploitable vulnerabilities," Chen explained. "The override codes being disseminated will permanently disable these systems." On 100 worlds simultaneously, coordinated uprisings began with unprecedented effectiveness. Each rebellion employed tactics specifically designed to counter local hegemony forces, using knowledge that could only have come from meticulous study of hegemony military doctrine. "You cannot possibly understand all our systems," protested Tech Commander Logan. "Some of these technologies have been refined over millennia." "We didn't need to understand everything," Chen replied. "Just the critical vulnerabilities. Your civilization's technological stagnation made prediction possible. You haven't fundamentally innovated in over 500 years, merely refined existing approaches." Zextar watched his empire crumble, not through direct conquest, but through something far more dangerous: inspired resistance armed with perfect intelligence. Every minute brought reports of new uprisings, hegemony installations falling, and once loyal vassal states declaring independence. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice subdued. "You could have destroyed our fleet completely. Why this approach instead?" Chen's answer was simple but devastating. "Because conquest was never our objective. We learned from your mistakes, High Admiral. Empires maintained through force inevitably fall. We prefer a galaxy of sovereign allies to one of subjugated servants." 6 months after the hegemony's collapse, representatives from all known spacefaring civilizations gathered in Earth's orbital diplomatic station Harmony. The massive structure, constructed in orbit between Earth and its moon, demonstrated humanity's true manufacturing capabilities, built within weeks using the same hidden industrial capacity that had produced Earth's fleet. The Grand Assembly Hall featured a circular arrangement of 73 delegation platforms, each adjusted to the environmental needs of its occupants. At the center stood Admiral Helena Chen, now serving as Earth's diplomatic representative, her formal uniform exchanged for the blue and silver attire of Earth's diplomatic corps. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals," Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translation field. "Earth proposes a new framework for interstellar relations, one based on mutual respect, defense, and technological exchange." The Proximan ambassador, Kellner, rescued from execution during the liberation of his homeworld, addressed the assembly next. "I have witnessed both the worst of the hegemony and the best of humanity. Earth could have established itself as the new dominant power, yet they chose another path." Former High Admiral Zextar, now representing the reformed territories of the former hegemony core worlds, rose from his platform. His once proud crest was now trimmed in the traditional posture of humility. "For 3,000 years, we believed military superiority was the only path to security," he acknowledged. "Earth has demonstrated a different approach, one that, despite our history, they now offer to include us in." The human delegation introduced technologies that transformed energy production, medicine, and environmental restoration, innovations developed during Earth's centuries of isolation. Most notable was the quantum communication network that would allow instantaneous contact between member worlds, replacing the limited faster-than-light communication systems previously used. "These technologies were never weapons," explained Dr. Eliza Kimathi, Earth's science director. "They were developed to preserve and enhance life, not to dominate others. We share them freely with all who join this community of worlds." As discussions continued over 3 days, a new charter took shape. The Galactic community would feature a rotating council representing different regions of space, mutual defense agreements, and open scientific exchange. Most significantly, the Charter explicitly protected the independence and cultural sovereignty of all member worlds. "The strength of this community lies in our differences," Chen explained during the final session. "Earth's own history taught us that diversity of thought, culture, and approach leads to greater innovation and resilience than any single philosophy could provide. Former hegemony worlds found themselves rebuilding with human assistance rather than facing retribution. Earth's massive dreadnoughts were not scrapped, but reproposed as multi-species research vessels and rapid response ships for natural disasters. Their names changed to reflect their new mission: Cooperation, Discovery, Renewal, Unity, and Harmony. As the assembly concluded with the formal signing ceremony, Ambassador Kellner approached Chen privately. "The Proximan histories will remember you as liberators," he said. "But I'm curious, Why did Earth wait so long? You could have revealed yourselves decades ago." Chen smiled. Humanity learned patience from studying history. Revealing our capabilities too soon would have led to an arms race rather than this opportunity for peace. Sometimes the most decisive victory comes not from winning a battle, but from changing the nature of the conflict itself. As delegates departed for their homeworlds, the galaxy began a new chapter, one where Earth's unexpected strength had transformed not just the balance of power, but the very meaning of power itself.